Great to see you here again. My name is Luc de Koster, founder of the Koster Academy. And in this new video about the critical chain project management method, I'm going to look into some project planning considerations. What did we do in critical path? What are the different elements that we can identify? And what about the financing of the project? But before we continue, click on the subscribe button, click on the bell button, and every time we have a new video, YouTube will inform you about it. So let's have a look at the critical path method and project budgeting. First, what we did in the critical path method is that we determine the start and finish times of the activities. We allocate the activities to people and we create the different budget curves. The resource allocation is very important because we have to resolve all resource conflicts and we can find a budget baseline. Now, there are other considerations you can consider here because when we have activities with a lot of slack, it's better to move them to a later date because we have more flexibility, we have advantages, we don't have to put everything in the beginning, let's say in their early start date, but moving them further into the project also makes it sure that when something happens, that these items are not damaged, or once they are completed and we have a change, we have to redo the work, we lose a lot more money. So postponing activities and using the slack, of course we want to keep a little bit of slack always there, but it's a very important element that we can do when we are creating the budget baseline. It's not only about resources. Now, when we look at the budget curves, we can find three budget curves. We have the early start budget curve, where all the activities start as early as they can. Everything is planned on the early start date. Then we have the late start. All activities start as late as they can, so they all start at their late start date, but it also means that there is no more slack. It means all the paths have basically become critical. And then we have the planned start. We find the time between early start and late start, depending on resource optimization and slack reduction. So what we find here is this curve for a project I named Frisbee. We have the early start curve, which is the blue curve. The orange reddish curve is the late start, and in between we have the planned start curve. Now here we have the financial overview. How are we spending the money? And we see clearly when we move to the late start that we are spending money later, which is of course a financial advantage. On the other hand, we also see when the gray curve is closer to the red curve, well, then we have less slack. When the curve is closer to the blue curve, then we have more slack. It's very important to consider these elements. The gray curve basically becomes the baseline, the cost baseline of the project, and we also refer this as the critical path position of the project, in this case project Frisbee. Now, effects of start time on the project. We always have to look at finding a start date which is between early and late start. Late start is obtained when we calculate back, in our case, from the same end date of the project, the duration of the project, but we can also use the late start date as the time that the customer wants us to finish the project. And then we can look at resource availability and slack. Now, resource utilization is one reason to move the activities to a later start time or to extend them or both. So we can move the activity to a later start time, keeping the duration. We can extend the duration without changing the start time, or we can have the combination of both. We move the activity and we extend the activity. The final selection is in fact when we find the planned start time, when we optimize resource utilization and slack reduction. On the other hand, we should avoid having too much slack, like I said, or we can call it WIP. WIP is too much work that is being done that is waiting to be completed. Now, when we have those finished activities, we reduce the flexibility. If we make a change, it's already been done. So we have to redo the work that we did before and we are losing money. Now, also these elements could have been done badly. We don't see it. We only see it very late in the project, and they can also be damaged while they are waiting for integration. What we are looking for is more like a just-in-time approach, which is better and more economical. Just-in-time means that we only start on the activities when we have to start. So when we plan a new activity and we know when we need the part, we're basically planning backwards to say, okay, we need the part at this time. So when do we have to start working on that part? It's typically what we do in a Kaizen environment, just-in-time environment, or just-in-schedule environment. Now, when we look at the cash flow and start time of activities, now we start creating deliverables. We have to pay for them. And here we can also have an optimization. When we look at the different budget curves that we saw before, we also see what is the cash flow over the project. And I already explained it when we looked at the critical path position of the project. We see when we put all the activities in early start, all the work is done early and it must be paid early. And of course, once we have paid it, we have to consider it in our calculations for payback time, net present value, and internal rate of return. So the earlier we pay for the work that we are doing, the more negative the payback time, net present value, and the internal rate of return will be. On the other hand, when we put all in the late start, the work is done late and it will have a positive effect on the cash flow and the financial parameters. Now, we have a problem here because when everything is in late start, everything is critical. And we may have to find a compromise. Like I said, we can find a planned start, which is between the two. But the farther away we are from the early start and the closer to the late start, first of all, we have the cash flow, which is spent later. But on the other hand, the closer we come to late start, the less flexibility we have on the project in means of slack. On the other hand, producing the things later gives us more flexibility in case we have changes later on. We have advantages like damages that will not occur as easy because we have the elements ready and they can be integrated immediately. So that was it for this presentation about some planning considerations. Don't forget to click on the subscribe button, click on the bell button, and whenever we have a new video, YouTube will inform you about it. Thank you very much, and I'm looking forward to seeing you in our next videos. Bye bye.